What's up, YouTube? I'm here doing my prediction video for UFC Ultimate Fighter 29 finale. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Mana Martinez versus Guido Canetti. Right off the bat, Mana missed weight by kind of a lot. He weighed in at like 140. They're both strikers. I think it'll be back and forth fun striking fight. I was considering picking Mana, but I think because he missed weight by so much, he's probably not going to be the best of shape, so I'm going to lean towards Canetti. I always thought this fight was going to be closer than I think a lot of people thought, because I think they're both really good strikers. But I'm leaning ever so slightly towards Canetti just because he made weight, and I think he's going to be in better shape. So I'm going to pick Canetti to win by either a close decision or a late TKO. Next is Jamal Emmers versus Pat Santabini. To me, Pat's really just a wrestler. I think Jamal has good enough wrestling to keep it on the feet, and I think Jamal has a significant advantage in the overall striking. You know, Pat's probably got better submission game overall, but I think that Jamal's good enough of a wrestler in his own right to keep it on the feet and just outpoint Pat on the feet and at least win a 29-20 decision. If not, I think Jamal gets a late TKO. Next, we got JJ Aldridge versus Vanessa. I can't say this chick's last name. I know Vanessa's taking this fight on short notice. She's not that great of a fighter, in my opinion. She's just mediocre. I think JJ keeps us on the feet and just outpoints her for 3 rounds. I think JJ's got too good takedown defense and is too good of a striker for this fight to be close. So, like I said, I'm going to pick JJ by 30-27 decision. Next is Dustin Jacoby versus Darren Stewart. And these guys are both really good strikers. I just think Jacoby is the bigger guy. He's the real light heavyweight going up against a guy who's a middleweight. I think Darren Stewart always has had kind of a little bit of a conditioning problem. He doesn't always throw enough volume, and that hurts him. And, you know, with Dustin Jacoby, he kind of slows down a little bit as the fight goes on, but that's because he is fighting at a fairly high pace the whole time. I feel like as long as he doesn't get finished late, I think Dustin Jacoby will probably win every round and win a solid 30-27 decision. Next is Sam Alvey versus Wellington Turman. To me, I think Wellington, you know, he could probably take this fight down a bunch of times and kind of control Sam. I think that Sam will be able to stuff the takedowns, and I think that he's just the better overall striker, and I think Sam's eventually going to catch Turman with a knockout. This fight's really tough because neither one of these guys have been super consistent recently, and I could see either guy just kind of doing what they want. It's either going to be a really dominant, grindy decision win for Turman or like a big KO win for Alvey, and I'm just leaning towards the KO win for Alvey. Next is Alessio Di Chirico versus Abdullah Raka Al-Sahan. To me, Al-Sahan has looked not that great recently. He's been getting kind of knocked out and controlled on the ground a lot. I think moving back up to middleweight will help, but I don't think that Chikadze like that good either. This fight is so tough because neither guy has looked super good recently. Like Chikadze, even though he won his last fight by knockout, he was losing that fight until he caught the guy, and then he was on a 3-fight losing streak before that win. So I think that this is going to be a really close fight. I think one of these guys is just going to catch the other with a big knockout punch. I'm leaning ever towards slightly towards Al-Sahan. I just think he's a little bit faster, and that's why I'm leaning. I think he'll win by knockout, but I could see either of you guys winning by KO in like the first round or two. I don't think either of these guys are that great, and it's like a coin flip as to who's going to KO the other. But I'm going to lean towards Al-Sahan. Next is onto the main card. Mahmoud Murkadov versus Gerald Meerschaert, and Mahmoud has looked really, really good. His striking's looking really, really good. My biggest thing is he has been submitted a bunch of times. He hasn't lost in a long time, but I feel like this is the best grappler he's fought in a while, and I really want to see how well he does on the ground against someone who's so good with their jiu-jitsu and wrestling. I do think Mahmoud is probably going to win, but I'm leaning towards Meerschaert just because, like I said, Gerald, unless you catch him right off the bat, he's really good at forcing fights to the ground, and he does catch a lot of guys down there because he's really good with his jiu-jitsu and wrestling. I feel like Mahmoud is more of like a volume guy, and he eventually wears guys down and knocks them out in the third. He's a lot of third-round knockouts. And I think that Gerald Meerschaert, his biggest strength is his conditioning and his volume and his ability to keep pace for 3 rounds. So, although I do think Mahmoud is probably the favorite, and he probably will win, I'm going to pick Gerald. I think he's going to force this fight to the ground a bunch and eventually win by submission. So I'm going to pick Gerald by like 2nd or 3rd round sub. Next is Andre Pertovsky versus Michael Gilmore. To me, Andre's just got a phenomenally huge advantage in the grappling. Like, I think Michael's only getting the shot because Dana likes him because he took that one fight on so short notice on The Ultimate Fighter and because he was just like staying in Vegas. it's like, I get that you like this guy, but like that show showed me that this dude has like little to no grappling. Like, once Hector Urbina took him down, he just controlled him and easily controlled him until he eventually caught him in the rear naked choke. It only took him like a minute or two. I think Andre's just as good as Gilbert is. Gilbert's probably a little bit better of a striker, but I mean, in terms of their grappling, I'd say they're even, and I think it's going to be the exact same thing. I think Andre's going to take him down early, control him, beat him up until he eventually gets like an arm triangle or rear naked choke. So I'm going to pick Andre to win by first round submission. Next is Kevin Lee versus Daniel Rodriguez, and to me, this fight's really simple. I think that Daniel Rodriguez is way too big for Kevin Lee to just take down and control. I think Daniel's got good takedown defense. He's good at getting back up to his feet and just doing damage in the clinch. I think that Kevin's going to be shooting for a lot of takedowns that he's not going to get. And I think Daniel's just the better overall striker. Kevin's primarily a wrestler grappler guy. Like, he has decent striking, but I would say Daniel's the better striker and Kevin's the better grappler, but I don't think Kevin's a welterweight. I think that, he's clearly a lightweight. Maybe, like, I've said this before, I wish there was like a 165-pound weight class and then welterweight moved up to 175. So every weight class was like divided by 10, and they just called the 165 weight the cruiserweight division, just so they all have their own names. I know that in boxing, cruiserweight's something different, but you know what I mean? I don't like juniors, personally, so it's just like, welterweight, cruiserweight, lightweight. That's just how I see it, personally. And that'd be great, because 165, he could probably make that, and then, Rodriguez is pretty big, he'd probably fight at 75, and then guys wouldn't be cutting as much weight either, because if there were more weight classes, like, and lightweight and welterweight have the most guys, too, you know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't be suffering too much if there was a 165-pound weight class. But either way, I don't think Kevin Lee's a welterweight. I think that he's going to shoot for takedowns, not get a lot of them, and Rodriguez is eventually going to wear him down. And I wouldn't be shocked if Rodriguez finishes him late, because I think Kevin Lee will start to get tired, and Rodriguez will just swarm on him and maybe knock him out. Either way, I think Rodriguez wins at least a 29-20 decision, if not a late third-round knockout. Next, we got the bantamweight Ultimate Fighter finale between Ricky Tercios versus Brandon Hillstead, or Brady. To me, Brady and Ricky fight very similarly. I just think Ricky has the much better gas tank, and that's what this fight's going to come down to. They're both forward pressure wrestlers with volume striking. I'd say Ricky's a little bit better with his overall striking than Brady is. The grappling's basically even, but I think what we saw with a lot of Ricky's fights is he just doesn't get tired. He keeps the same pace all 3 rounds, and a lot of the guys that he fought in the show could keep pace with him for like those first 2 rounds, and then they started to get really tired by the third. And I think the same thing's going to happen in this fight. I think Brady keeps pace with him for the first 2 rounds, and then we see Ricky really take over in the third. I think the first 2 rounds will be close. I think one guy will win each, and I think Ricky wins a dominant third round, maybe even gets a late finish. But either way, I see Ricky winning at least a 29-20 decision, and yeah, he becomes the new Ultimate Fighter. Next is Bryan Battle versus Gilbert Urbina, and this is the thing. Bryan Battle's like really good, but I still don't think his ground game's that great. Like, he has good takedown defense, but Andre almost submitted him in their fight. He had a really solid rear naked choke, and I think the biggest advantage that Gilbert has in this fight is his conditioning's a lot better than Andre's is. I think if Gilbert just continuously tries to get this fight to the ground and he takes Bryan Battle's back, he'll win by sub. I don't think Bryan's like the heaviest striker ever. It's just he has good volume and he has good movement. But Gilbert has good movement himself, and I think Gilbert's the much better grappler overall. And I feel like the way Bryan's been able to win a lot of his fights was just good conditioning. And I don't think that's going to work against Gilbert because Gilbert has good conditioning himself. So I think Gilbert's going to eventually force this fight to the ground. I think he's going to win by rear naked choke. Finally, on the main event, we got Edson Barboza versus Giga Chikadze. To me, they're both really good kickboxers. And in fights like this, where it's like basically dead even in the kickboxing, I'd say Giga's the more technical guy, but Barboza has a bit more speed and power. It's kind of the X factors to me. And the biggest X factor, the 2 biggest are, I think, both guys don't have the greatest conditioning, but I do think Barboza has the better conditioning. Because Barboza only really tends to get tired when guys pressure him a ton. And Giga isn't like a pressure fighter. He's more like a technical kickboxer who wants to do what Barboza wants to do, which is just kind of strike from the outside. I also think the biggest thing is that if this fight is ever in a grappling situation, Barboza has a huge advantage. I think Barboza's overall grappling and his conditioning when he grapples is much better than Giga's is. Giga can grapple guys, but when you've watched his UFC fights, he tends to get tired quicker when he's grappling more. And like I said, I think overall Barboza has the better conditioning. And I think the longer this fight goes, the more it's going to favor him. And I think come like round 3 or 4, Barboza is going to really start lighting up Giga. And I think he's going to win by like probably a 4th round TKO. Either from ground and pound or just when he gets Giga kind of in the corner and just starts beating on him. Either way, I just think unless Giga finishes Barboza in the first 2 rounds, Barboza will get a late finish. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.